So there I was, standing in my driveway on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning, minding my own business and contemplating the deep philosophical questions of life. Like whether I should have oatmeal or Lucky Charms for breakfast, when I noticed something that would forever change the trajectory of my suburban existence. A crack. Not just any crack, mind you, but a hairline fracture in my concrete driveway that was maybe the width of a spaghetti noodle. I'm talking barely visible to the naked eye. You'd need a magnifying glass and the investigative skills of Sherlock Holmes to even spot this thing. But you know who found it? Karen. Of course it was Karen. Karen Henderson, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, supreme ruler of suburban mediocrity, destroyer of joy, and apparently part-time driveway inspector with the visual acuity of a hawk that just got LASIK surgery. I swear, this woman could spot a property code violation from space. She probably has Google Earth bookmarked specifically to zoom in on people's yards and look for infractions. It's her hobby, her passion, her reason for existing. The letter arrived 3 days later, because apparently Karen doesn't believe in verbal warnings or, basic human decency. It was printed on official HOA letterhead, which, let me just say, is the most passive-aggressive piece of stationery ever created by mankind. There's something deeply unsettling about receiving threats typed in Calibri font, with a little clip art image of a house in the corner, like they're trying to make authoritarianism look friendly and approachable. "Dear resident," it began, because Karen couldn't even be bothered to use my actual name, despite the fact that we've lived 3 doors apart for 6 years and she definitely knows who I am, because she once reported me for putting my trash cans out 4 hours too early. It has come to our attention that the driveway at 42 Maple Drive is in violation of Section 7, 3.2 of the Meadowbrook Estates Community Guidelines, which clearly states that all driveways must be maintained in pristine condition, free from cracks, stains, or structural damage. Pristine condition. Pristine. We're talking about a driveway here, not the Sistine Chapel. It's literally a slab of concrete whose entire purpose is to get driven on, rained on, snowed on, and occasionally have my neighbor's cat poop on it when Mr. Whiskers is feeling particularly spiteful. The bar for pristine seemed a little high for something that exists specifically to be abused by vehicles and weather. The letter continued with the enthusiasm of a DMV employee reading the vision test chart for the 10,000th time. You are hereby required to repair said damage within 30 days or face a fine of $500 with additional daily penalties of $50 until the violation is remedied. Failure to comply may result in a lien being placed on your property. $500. For a crack, I needed a microscope to see, and $50 a day after that, because apparently Karen thought I was made of money and free time. I could practically hear her cackling from her house 3 doors down, probably sipping her morning coffee from a mug that said, "I'm not bossy, I'm the HOA president," or something equally obnoxious. Surrounded by 3-ring binders full of neighborhood violations organized alphabetically by street address. Now here's where a normal, well-adjusted person would probably just call a concrete guy, get the crack filled with standard gray filler, fork over $200, and move on with their life. Accept defeat. Bow to the HOA overlords. Maintain the beige uniformity that Karen so desperately craved. But you see, I am not a normal, well-adjusted person. I am Jack Morrison, 34-year-old graphic designer, amateur chef who once set pasta on fire. Don't ask, but it involves me forgetting I was boiling water and the pot running completely dry. Owner of 7 graphic tees with increasingly stupid slogans, Dapple White, and apparently someone who makes questionable life decisions when pushed to their absolute limit by petty suburban bureaucracy. I looked at that crack in my driveway. Then I looked at the HOA letter, then back at the crack. Then I read the letter again, specifically focusing on the part about repair said damage. And something inside my brain just snapped. Like that crack in my driveway, except way more dramatic and accompanied by what I can only describe as the mental sound effect of a record scratch, followed by ominous music. "You want pristine?" I muttered to myself, probably looking like a complete lunatic talking to my driveway at 8 in the morning. My neighbor Steve was mowing his lawn across the street, and definitely gave me a concerned look, but Steve can mind his own business. Steve's got his own problems. Contemplating. Like the fact that he mows his lawn in a different pattern every single week, like he's trying to communicate with aliens through grass art. "I'll give you pristine. I'll give you so pristine you won't know what hit you." I spent the next 3 days going down what I can only describe as the most beautiful, artistic, and slightly unhinged research rabbit hole of my entire life. Epoxy resin. Colored epoxy resin. The kind they use to fill cracks in wood to create those gorgeous river tables you see on Pinterest that cost approximately 1 kidney and your firstborn child. The kind that makes slabs of wood look like they have actual rivers of glass running through them, all blue and ethereal and expensive as hell. Turns out you can use this stuff on concrete too. And it comes in every color of the rainbow. And plus some colors that definitely don't exist in nature, but look absolutely sick when they catch the light. We're talking electric blues that look like Caribbean water, neon greens that practically glow in the dark, deep purples that would make Prince weep tears of joy, and this absolutely bonkers galaxy effect that has sparkles and metallic swirls and basically looks like the Aurora Borealis had a baby with a disco ball, and that baby decided to become building material. I ordered 17 different colors of epoxy resin. 17. My credit card statement arrived later that week and literally just had a sad face emoji next to the total. I swear, Amazon Prime has never been more beautifully weaponized. I got blues in 4 different shades, purples ranging from lavender to deep eggplant, greens, golds, silvers, and this one absolutely insane holographic option that changed colors depending on the angle you looked at it. The UPS driver started giving me knowing looks, like he understood I was either starting a very ambitious craft project or having some kind of breakdown. Possibly both. While I waited for my supplies to arrive, I did more research. I watched approximately 400 YouTube tutorials, joined 3 Facebook groups dedicated to resin art. Those people are intense, by the way. They have opinions about mixing techniques and curing times and will absolutely start fights in the comments, and may have accidentally become semi-fluent in the technical specifications of 2-part epoxy systems. I learned about mixing ratios, curing times, UV resistance, heat tolerance, and something called blooming, which sounds like a good thing, like your resin is flourishing and growing and achieving its dreams, but is actually terrible and means you screwed up the moisture levels and now your beautiful pour looks cloudy and sad. I discovered entire online communities of people who fill cracks in things with colored resin, wood, concrete, even broken ceramics. There's apparently a whole Japanese art form called kintsugi, where they repair broken pottery with gold, and I felt very cultured and artistic learning about this while simultaneously plotting suburban revenge. The packages started arriving. My mailman, bless him, looked increasingly concerned as he delivered box after box of mysterious chemicals to my doorstep. "Having a project?" he asked on day 3, eyeing the pile of resin containers I was hauling inside like they might explode at any moment. "Oh, just a little home improvement thing," I said, smiling way too widely, probably looking like the Joker if the Joker was really into arts and crafts. I probably looked like a serial killer. He definitely walked back to his truck faster than normal, and I'm pretty sure he reported my house as suspicious activity to someone because I saw a cop car drive by slowly later that day. When everything was finally assembled in my garage, I stood there surveying my materials like a mad scientist about to bring his creation to life. Like Dr. Frankenstein, but instead of reanimating corpses, I was about to make my driveway fabulous. 17 bottles of colored resin, mixing cups, stir sticks, protective gloves that went up to my elbows, safety glasses that made me look like a deranged chemistry teacher, a respirator mask, because apparently this stuff can be toxic if you're a moron about it, and I was trying very hard not to be a moron, and approximately 6 different sets of instructions that all contradicted each other in fundamental and anxiety-inducing ways. "How hard can this be?" I said out loud to my garage full of craft supplies. Narrator voice. It was, in fact, going to be very hard. I started on a Saturday morning, bright and early at 6 a.m., partly because I was excited and partly because I needed maximum daylight to see what I was doing, and partly because I wanted to finish before Rachel woke up and could talk me out of this potentially insane plan. I cleaned that crack in my driveway like it was about to undergo surgery. I'm talking scrubbing with wire brushes, washing with 3 different cleaning solutions. Air blowing every speck of dust out with my shop vac running in reverse, drying with towels. This crack was cleaner than my actual house, cleaner than I'd been on my wedding day, cleaner than a hospital operating room. Then came the moment of truth. I mixed my first batch of resin, a deep, electric blue that looked like the ocean on the most perfect Caribbean vacation I've never taken, because I spend all my money on things like 17 bottles of epoxy resin to spite my HOA. The 2-part epoxy had to be mixed in exact ratios, and I'm not gonna lie, I was sweating despite the cool morning air. This felt like defusing a bomb, except the bomb was my own terrible decision-making, and the timer was Karen's inevitable fury. I poured it into the crack slowly, carefully, watching it seep down into the concrete like liquid sapphire, filling every microscopic gap. It was beautiful. Genuinely beautiful. The blue glowed against the gray concrete like a little river of pure artistic rebellion, like a vein of some precious gem that had somehow ended up in my boring suburban driveway. But here's the thing about revenge, it's a slippery slope. And here's the thing about me. I have 0 self-control when I'm on a roll, which Rachel will confirm is true about basically everything I do, from eating pizza to binge-watching TV shows, to apparently filling cracks with colored resin. 1 blue crack became 2 blue cracks. I found another tiny fracture about 6 inches away from the original. Well, that needed blue too. Then I noticed the blue cracks had some smaller branches, tiny little spiderweb patterns I'd never seen before. Those needed color, so I mixed up some purple, the deep royal purple, then some green for contrast. Then I thought, you know what? This section over here looks a little bland. So I gave it some gold, metallic, shimmering gold that looked like liquid treasure. I worked for 6 hours straight, lost in what I can only describe as an artistic trance, or possibly a mental breakdown fueled by spite and craft supplies. The line between the two is surprisingly thin when you're on your hands and knees in your driveway, covered in resin dust, talking to yourself about color theory. My back was screaming. My knees felt like someone had replaced them with broken glass. I'd gone through 2 pairs of gloves because I kept getting resin on them and having to throw them away. But I couldn't stop. Every time I found a new crack, a new imperfection in the concrete, it needed color. It needed it. This wasn't just about fixing my driveway anymore. This was about creating something beautiful out of Karen's petty tyranny. By the time the sun started setting, my driveway looked like someone had shattered a stained glass window and pressed the pieces into concrete, like God had decided to practice his rainbow-making skills on my property specifically. There were veins of blue, purple, green, orange, and this absolutely wild gold metallic that looked like liquid treasure when the light hit it right. The original hairline crack had spawned an entire network of artistic endeavor, spreading across my driveway like colorful lightning frozen in time, like the roots of some magnificent tree made of pure light and spite. I stood there, covered in resin dust, probably inhaling fumes I shouldn't have been inhaling despite my respirator mask that I'd definitely taken off too many times, with resin stuck in my hair and on my clothes, and thought, I have either created a masterpiece or completely destroyed my property value. Possibly both. Probably both. My wife, Rachel, came home from her book club right as I was cleaning up, trying unsuccessfully to scrape dried resin off my hands with a putty knife. She pulled into the driveway, carefully, very carefully, like she was navigating a minefield made of art, and just sat in her car for a solid minute staring at the colorful monstrosity beneath her tires, her face cycling through approximately 17 different emotions. When she finally got out, her expression was somewhere between horror and reluctant admiration. HOA, with maybe a dash of, I married this man, and now I have to live with the consequences of that decision. Jack, she said slowly, using that tone she reserves for when I do something particularly Jack-like, that special voice that means, what have you done now and how much is it going to cost to fix it? What the hell did you do to our driveway? Art, I said proudly, gesturing at my creation like I was unveiling the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, like I was Michelangelo showing off the Sistine Chapel. I made art. The HOA said the crack needed to be fixed, and technically it is fixed. It's just also colorful now, and sparkly, and possibly visible from space. Rachel walked around the driveway, examining the resin-filled cracks from different angles, crouching down to see how the light hit the metallic sections, running her finger along one of the blue veins. It actually looks kind of cool, she admitted, sounding surprised at herself. In a, my husband has lost his mind, but at least he's creative about it sort of way. That's the sweetest thing you've ever said to me. But you know Karen is going to have an aneurysm, right? Like an actual medical emergency. We might need to call an ambulance. That's the plan, honey. That's the plan. I spent the rest of the weekend adding more details, because apparently I have a problem, and that problem is not knowing when to stop, not knowing when enough is enough, not understanding the concept of less is more. I found more tiny cracks I'd never noticed before, hairline fractures in the corners, small divots near the garage, that one spot where the concrete had settled weird 5 years ago and created a little valley. All of them got the resin treatment. By Sunday evening, my driveway looked like a Jackson Pollock painting had mated with a geology exhibit, like someone had liquefied a sunset and poured it into concrete, like the Northern Lights had decided to retire and take up residence in suburban Pennsylvania. The pièce de résistance, and I'm genuinely proud of this part, it might be my greatest achievement as a human being, was the section right near the street, perfectly visible to anyone driving by, impossible to miss. I'd created this elaborate spiral pattern using 3 different shades of blue and purple, with little flecks of gold throughout that caught the sunlight. It looked legitimately amazing, like, I'm talking people started slowing down to look at it, amazing, causing minor traffic hazards because drivers were distracted. Amazing. I saw Mrs. Patterson from 2 streets over drive by 3 times in 1 hour, slowing down each time to gawk. Brad from around the corner actually stopped his car, got out, and took pictures. Even the teenagers who usually speed through our neighborhood going 20 miles over the limit slowed down to look. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train loaded with anvils and air horns. I was eating my Lucky Charms, had to stay on brand, had to remain consistent in my breakfast choices even as my life descended into beautiful chaos, and looking out the window when I saw her, Karen, marching down the sidewalk with the determination of a general leading troops into battle. With her phone out, taking pictures of my driveway from approximately 17 different angles. She was wearing what I had come to think of as her official HOA president outfit, a sensible beige pantsuit that somehow conveyed both authority and a complete lack of joy, shoes so sensible they probably filed taxes, a pearl necklace that screamed, I peaked in the 1950s and I'm very upset about it. Her hair was pulled back so tight, I'm surprised her eyebrows hadn't migrated to the back of her head, so tight it probably gave her a natural facelift. She had that look. You know the one. The, I'm about to ruin someone's day and I'm going to enjoy every second of it look. The, I've been waiting for this moment look. I watched her take photos for a solid 10 minutes. She crouched down to get close-ups of the resin. She stood up to get wide shots showing the full scope of my artistic crimes. She took pictures from the left, from the right, from straight on. She probably took panoramas. I wouldn't be surprised if she busted out a drone, called in aerial surveillance, contacted the International Space Station for satellite imagery. Then she looked up and saw me watching her from my window, my cereal bowl still in hand, milk probably dribbling down my chin. We made eye contact. I smiled my biggest, most genuine smile and gave her a cheerful little wave, the kind of wave you give to friends, to people you like. She did not wave back. She looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon wrapped in tax forms, like she'd discovered her retirement fund had been invested in Enron, like she'd just learned that everything she believed in was a lie. Her face turned an impressive shade of red. Not quite purple, but getting there. I could see her jaw clenching from inside my house. The letter arrived that afternoon, hand-delivered by Karen herself, who rang my doorbell with the aggression of someone trying to wake the dead. Apparently, Karen doesn't mess around when she's experiencing what I can only assume was apocalyptic levels of fury, when her entire worldview is being challenged by colored resin. "Dear resident," it began again, "because we're apparently not on a first-name basis, despite living on the same street for 6 years, despite me helping her carry groceries once when she twisted her ankle, despite our kids having gone to the same elementary school. It has come to our attention that unauthorized modifications have been made to the driveway at 42 Maple Drive. While the original structural crack has been addressed, the method of repair violates Section 12.7 of the Meadowbrook Estates Community Guidelines regarding aesthetic alterations to visible property features." I had to read that sentence 3 times, then a 4th time just to make sure I wasn't having a stroke. Aesthetic alterations. I'd fixed the crack, like they asked, followed their directive to the letter, but now the fix was too aesthetic, too beautiful, too interesting. You literally cannot win with these people. The crack was a problem, but fixing it in a noticeable way was also a problem. Schrodinger's violation, simultaneously required and forbidden. The letter continued, and I could practically hear Karen's voice dripping with vindictive satisfaction as I read. "The use of colored materials in driveway repair creates a visual disruption to the community's cohesive appearance and is therefore prohibited. You are required to remove the colored resin and restore the driveway to a uniform gray appearance within 14 days, or face escalating fines beginning at $200 per day. Remove it. Remove it." Do you know how hard it is to remove cured epoxy resin from concrete? It's basically impossible without destroying the entire driveway. I'd have to jackhammer the whole thing up and re-pour it, which would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000, maybe $10,000 if I wanted it done right. The resin bonds to concrete at a molecular level. It becomes one with the concrete. It's a marriage till death do they part. I did what any rational adult would do in this situation. I laughed, like genuinely laughed. A little bit maniacally, if I'm being honest. The kind of laugh that starts normal and then spirals into something that would concern mental health professionals. The kind of laugh that made my cat run out of the room. Rachel heard me from the kitchen and called out, "You got another letter from Karen, didn't you? She wants me to remove the resin. Can you remove it? Not without demolishing the entire driveway. Not without destroying everything. It's literally impossible." There was a pause. "So, what are you going to do?" I thought about it for exactly half a second. "Absolutely nothing, and also possibly make it worse. I'm thinking about adding some glow-in-the-dark sections." Rachel sighed, that special sigh that means, I married this man for better or worse, and this is definitely worse, but I'm sticking around anyway because the health insurance is good, and also I apparently have terrible judgment when it comes to life partners. Over the next week, something magical happened. Something I absolutely did not expect and definitely didn't plan for. My driveway became kind of famous. Not like viral internet famous, not like on the Today Show famous, but Meadowbrook Estates famous, which in suburban terms means everyone was talking about it at every book club, poker night, PTA meeting, and passive-aggressive neighborhood watch gathering. People started driving by specifically to look at it, not just driving by specifically detouring to drive by. And Steve from across the street came over one evening to ask what kind of resin I used because he had a crack in his patio and was feeling inspired and also tired of Karen's nonsense, honestly. The couple 3 houses down, the Johnsons, who I'd never actually spoken to before, knocked on my door to request my artistic services for their walkway, offering to pay me actual money. Even the mailman, my formerly concerned mailman who definitely thought I was building bombs, stopped to take a picture and told me it brightened his route. A crowd of approximately 11 people gathered on my lawn one Saturday morning, just looking at my driveway, taking pictures, pointing at different sections, discussing the color choices like art critics at a gallery. I made lemonade. It felt appropriate. But the best part, the absolute chef's kiss of this entire situation, the thing that made me feel like I'd won the lottery and the Super Bowl and an Oscar all at the same time? The local news picked it up. I don't know who tipped them off. Maybe it was Brad from 2 streets over who works in media and has always been kind of a troublemaker in the best way. Maybe it was one of the dozens of people who'd been posting photos on the neighborhood Facebook group, which had devolved into a civil war between Team Colorful Driveway and Team Karen. Maybe the news was just having a slow day, and someone thought angry HOA versus artistic homeowner would make good filler content. But one Tuesday afternoon, a news van pulled up in front of my house. An actual news van with a satellite dish and everything. Rachel called me from work, nearly incoherent. Jack! There's a news van at our house. What did you do?" A reporter, young, enthusiastic, clearly excited to be covering something more interesting than traffic accidents and city council budget meetings, knocked on my door. "Hi, I'm Jessica from Channel 7 News. We've heard you have a pretty unique solution to an HOA dispute. Would you be willing to talk to us on camera?" I may have blacked out a little bit, because the next thing I knew I was standing in my driveway, on camera, with professional lighting and everything, explaining my entire revenge plot to approximately 50,000 local viewers during the evening news. "So, the HOA fined you for having a crack?" Jessica asked, holding her microphone like she was uncovering Watergate, like she was about to blow the lid off the scandal of the century. "A hairline crack," I emphasized, making sure to really drive the point home. "Barely visible. You'd need a microscope. A really good one, but yes, $500 fine plus $50 a day after the deadline." "And your solution was to fill it with colored resin?" "I fixed it exactly like they asked," I said, putting on my most innocent face, channeling every ounce of wounded sincerity I could muster. The guideline said the crack needed to be repaired. They didn't specify how. They didn't say repair it in a boring way or repair it so nobody notices. I simply chose an aesthetically pleasing repair method that also happens to bring joy and beauty to an otherwise boring suburban landscape. I'm practically a community service. I could practically see the headline writing itself in Jessica's head. Homeowner turns HOA fine into artwork. Local man fights bureaucracy with beauty. Suburban rebellion comes in pretty colors. The segment aired that evening during the 6 o'clock news. Rachel and I watched it together, me eating popcorn like I was at the movies, her alternating between pride and mortification. They showed my driveway in all its rainbow glory, interviewed me looking surprisingly articulate for someone who'd made such an insane decision, and then, and this is where it got really good, where it became must-see TV, they reached out to Karen for comment. Karen appeared on screen in what I assume was her living room, sitting stiffly on what looked like the most uncomfortable couch ever manufactured, surrounded by those weird, decorative pillows that nobody's allowed to actually use. She was wearing a blazer. A blazer. For a news interview about a driveway dispute. She looked like she'd been sucking on lemons for the past hour, like she'd been practicing her serious, concerned citizen face in the mirror, and had gotten stuck that way. "The HOA has rules for a reason," she said stiffly, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. "These guidelines maintain property values and ensure our community maintains certain standards of uniformity and professionalism." "But isn't art also valuable?" Jessica pressed, because apparently Jessica was Team Colorful Driveway and wasn't pulling any punches. "Several neighbors have said they love the unique driveway. Some have even said it's improved the neighborhood's character." Karen's face did this thing where it looked like she was trying to smile, but had forgotten how human facial expressions work. like someone was operating her face with a remote control, and the batteries were dying. "The rules are the rules," she managed, her eye twitching slightly. "Without rules, we'd have chaos, anarchy. People would be painting their houses purple, or installing inflatable lawn decorations, or—" she visibly shuddered, "parking recreational vehicles in their driveways." The segment ended with Jessica standing in front of my house, the glowing driveway visible behind her in all its glory. The question remains, is this creative problem-solving or an HOA violation? An expression of artistic freedom or a disruption to community standards? The community seems divided, and this story is far from over. This is Jessica Torres, Channel 7 News. My phone exploded, and I mean exploded. Texts, calls, Facebook messages, Instagram DMs from people I hadn't talked to since high school, LinkedIn messages from people I'd never even met. Everyone had an opinion. Most of them were on my side, which was deeply gratifying and also gave me hope for humanity. A few people called me an anarchist destroying property values, which I also found gratifying in a different way. Someone compared me to Banksy. Another person said I was the hero we need in these dark times, which seemed a bit dramatic for a driveway. But I appreciated the sentiment. My aunt in Florida shared the news segment on Facebook with the caption, "That's my nephew," with approximately 40 exclamation points. My mom called to say she was proud of me, but also concerned about my decision-making. My dad just texted a thumbs-up emoji and stick it to the man. But the real kicker came 3 days later. An art blogger from the city, someone with an actual following and everything, someone whose opinion apparently mattered in art circles, wrote a piece about my driveway. The headline was "Suburban Rebellion: How One Man Turned an HOA Fine into Folk Art." Folk art. My driveway was folk art. I was a folk artist. I had created folk art without even meaning to. The article was incredible. They talked about the juxtaposition of rigid suburban conformity versus individual creative expression. They analyzed my color choices with the seriousness usually reserved for discussing Picasso. Apparently, my blue-purple-gold combination represented the struggle between order and chaos, with gold serving as a bridge between the rigid structures of society and the fluid nature of human creativity. They compared my work to the Memphis design movement. They even interviewed some art professor from the state university who said my work was a fascinating example of found object art in a domestic context, and a commentary on the commodification of suburban space and the suppression of individual identity in planned communities. I had no idea I'd done all that. I just thought I was being petty. I printed that article out and hung it on my fridge with approximately 8 magnets. Rachel said I was being insufferable. She was absolutely right. But I was insufferable with a professionally written article about my folk art, so I felt justified. The traffic to our street increased dramatically. People came by to take photos for their Instagram accounts. A couple of art students from the university asked if they could include my driveway in their thesis project about suburban resistance art. I said yes, obviously. They measured it. They photographed it from every angle. They interviewed me about my artistic process, and I had to explain that my artistic process was mostly spite and YouTube tutorials, but they seemed impressed anyway. Karen sent another letter. This one was longer and angrier and included threats about legal action, about taking me to court, about liens on my property, about destroying my credit rating. The font was bigger. There were words in all caps. I could practically feel the rage radiating off the paper like heat. I sent a reply, my first and only official communication to the HOA during this entire saga, that said, and I quote, "Dear HOA Board and President Henderson, the driveway has been repaired as requested per your letter, dated date. The structural crack has been filled and sealed. The repair is permanent and professionally executed. No further action will be taken. The community guidelines did not specify aesthetic requirements for repairs, only that repairs must be completed. I believe I have fulfilled this requirement. Best regards, Jack Morrison, resident and accidental folk artist, as featured in City Arts magazine." I may have been a little smug about that last part. Okay, I was extremely smug about that last part. Then things escalated in a way I did not expect, could not have predicted, and definitely didn't plan for, even in my wildest revenge fantasies. Someone, and I have my suspicions it was Steve, because he'd been suspiciously supportive throughout this whole thing, and also he once mentioned he worked in tech, which apparently means he knows how to make online petitions, created a change.org petition titled Save Jack's Artistic Driveway, amend Meadowbrook Estates HOA guidelines to allow creative expression. The description read, Jack Morrison fixed his driveway crack as requested by the HOA, but used beautiful colored resin instead of boring gray cement. The result is a stunning piece of folk art that brings joy to our community. The HOA is threatening massive fines to force him to remove it. Sign this petition to show your support for creativity, individuality, and common sense in our neighborhood. Let's tell the HOA that art isn't a violation, it's an improvement. The petition got 847 signatures in 2 days. A neighborhood of maybe 300 houses. People from outside Meadowbrook Estates were signing it. People from other states were signing it. Someone from Canada signed it with the comment, "Stick it to the HOA, eh? We're rooting for you from Toronto." Someone from Germany signed it. Someone claiming to be from Antarctica signed it, though I suspect that might have been fake. The comments section became a support group for people oppressed by their own HOAs. People shared their own nightmare stories. Someone's HOA had fined them for having the wrong shade of beige on their shutters. Someone else got violations for their garden gnomes. It was therapeutic. It was beautiful. It was bringing people together through shared trauma. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. According to Brad, who went because he loves drama more than anyone I've ever met, and also because he was secretly recording it on his phone for posterity, Karen tried to hold firm on the violations and fines, pounding her fist on the table, citing section after section of the guidelines, presenting a PowerPoint presentation about maintaining community standards. But literally every other board member pointed out that the negative publicity was way worse than one colorful driveway. Tom, the board secretary, apparently said, and I'm quoting Brad quoting Tom here, "Karen, people are signing a petition to support this guy. We're getting emails, phone calls. The local news made US look like the villains. Property values aren't going down because of a pretty driveway. Oh boy. They're going down because we look like petty tyrants on the 6 o'clock news." Apparently, there was yelling, possibly some crying. Brad couldn't confirm who's crying, but we all had our theories. Strong theories. Karen-shaped theories. The vote was 4. 1 to amend the community guidelines to allow artistic elements in property repairs and maintenance, subject to reasonable aesthetic standards to be determined on a case-by-case basis. The one opposing vote was, unsurprisingly, Karen, who reportedly stormed out of the meeting before it was even over. I got a letter the next week. This one was different. It was signed by Tom, the board secretary, not Karen. The tone was almost friendly, apologetic. It officially withdrew all fines and violations related to my driveway and included a copy of the amended guidelines. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. "Your driveway has brought unexpected joy to many residents and sparked important conversations about our community rules. Thank you for your creativity. Please consider this matter closed. Tom, board secretary and secret admirer of your work." I may have teared up a little bit, just a little. Rachel definitely saw and definitely won't let me live it down. She's already brought it up 3 times during unrelated arguments. But the story doesn't end there, because the universe has a sense of humor, and that sense of humor is apparently set to maximum chaos, with a side of, "You've got to be kidding me." 2 months after my driveway became the most famous driveway in suburban history, after the news coverage died down and life started to return to normal. I was outside watering my sad attempt at a garden, 3 tomato plants that were definitely dying and some herbs that looked like they'd given up on life, when a car pulled up. A nice car, like, someone successful is driving this nice. A BMW. A new BMW. A woman got out, professional looking, wearing actual business attire on a Saturday morning, carrying a leather portfolio and a tablet. "Jack Morrison?" she asked, like she already knew but was being polite about it. That's me, I said, suddenly very aware that I was wearing my rattiest shorts, the ones with paint stains and a hole in an unfortunate location. A shirt that said, I put ketchup on my ketchup that I'd gotten as a gag gift, and Crocs. I was meeting a professional business person while wearing Crocs. I'm Amanda Chen from Stellar Resin Company. We manufacture high-grade epoxy products for construction and artistic applications. I've been following your situation, and I have a business proposal for you. My brain short-circuited, like completely flatlined. I'm sorry, what? Amanda smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Your driveway has generated significant interest in decorative resin applications for home repair. We've seen a 23% increase in consumer inquiries about colored epoxy since your news segment aired. People want to do what you did. You've essentially created a market trend. We'd like to hire you as a brand ambassador. You'd create content showing creative uses for our products, maybe do some tutorials, attend some home and garden shows, that sort of thing. We're prepared to offer you a contract with a monthly retainer. And if you're interested, we'd cover the cost of redoing your entire driveway professionally to showcase what's really possible with our premium products and professional installation. I just stared at her, blinked, stared some more. You want to pay me because I got mad at my HOA and filled cracks with colored stuff? Essentially, yes. We'd also like to feature your story in our marketing materials. From HOA violation to artistic innovation, that sort of thing. We think you have a very relatable, authentic voice that resonates with our target demographic of homeowners who want to solve practical problems in creative ways. I signed that contract so fast, my hand cramped. Rachel, who'd come outside to see what was happening, just stood there with her mouth open. Did you just get a job from your driveway? I think so. I think I'm a professional driveway influencer now. 3 weeks later, a professional crew showed up. A whole team of people with equipment and expertise and color charts and design plans. They didn't just fix my driveway, they completely redid the entire thing. Not just the cracks, the entire thing. They created this absolutely stunning design with swirls of blue and purple and gold, with embedded LED lights that made it glow at night like something from a science fiction movie. They added these amazing geometric patterns in the corners. They used 5 different types of specialty resin, including this one that had actual crushed glass in it that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. It looked like the aurora borealis had decided to vacation permanently in my driveway, like the northern lights had retired to Pennsylvania. Dun. It was featured in home design magazines, actual printed magazines with glossy pages. Home and Garden Living did a 2-page spread. Modern Homeowner put it on their cover with the headline, The New Face of Home Repair, When Art Meets Function. People drove from an hour away to see it. A tour bus, an actual tour bus, full of people from a local senior center, added my house to their Neighborhood Architectural Points of Interest tour. I served them lemonade. They took approximately 4,000 pictures. Karen stopped leaving her house much after that. When we did cross paths, usually when I was getting my mail and she was getting hers, trapped in that awkward neighbor distance where you can't pretend you don't see each other, she'd just sort of make this face like she'd smelled something terrible and walk the other direction very quickly. I tried to be gracious in victory. I really did. I waved. I said hello. I offered to lend her my lawnmower once, but it was hard not to feel smug every time I pulled into my absolutely gorgeous, professionally done, completely HOA compliant, magazine-featured LED-illuminated artistic driveway. The final twist came 6 months later. Karen resigned as HOA president. The official reason was pursuing other opportunities, which is corporate speak for, please let me leave with some dignity. But Brad heard from his wife, who heard from her book club, which is basically the CIA of suburban intelligence gathering, that Karen had become an embarrassment to the community after the whole driveway incident went viral, made national news, got picked up by some of those feel-good story segments on morning shows. Apparently, she'd become the face of petty HOA tyranny. Someone made a meme out of her news interview screenshot. It circulated. It got popular. Someone on TikTok did a dramatic reading of her HOA letters with ominous music. It has 2 million views. She was recognized at Target once. It did not go well for her. Steve ran for HOA president on a platform of common sense and less crazy, with a campaign slogan that was just not Karen. He won in a landslide. It wasn't even close. He got 78% of the vote. His first act as president was to officially recognize my driveway as a community landmark and source of neighborhood pride. I framed that letter too. It's hanging right next to the folk art article. Now, I won't lie and say this whole thing was some calculated master plan, some brilliant strategy I'd conceived from the beginning. It absolutely wasn't. It started as petty revenge against a ridiculous fine for a crack you needed a microscope to see, against Karen's need to control every aspect of suburban existence, against the tyranny of beige conformity. But somewhere along the way, it became something more. It became about standing up to arbitrary rules enforced by petty people. It became about finding creative solutions to stupid problems. It became about bringing a little bit of color and joy and weirdness to an otherwise beige suburban landscape designed to crush individuality. My driveway is still there, still gorgeous, still glowing at night like a beacon of artistic rebellion visible from space. People still stop by to take photos. I've got a decent side hustle now doing resin tutorials online for Stellar Resin Company, teaching other people how to turn their home repairs into art projects, making actual money doing something I started out of spite. Rachel says I found my calling. I say I just really hate being told what to do by people who take themselves too seriously and measure their worth by their ability to find violations in other people's property. And Karen? Last I heard, she moved to a different subdivision about 40 minutes away. One with even stricter HOA rules, one where every house looks identical and the guidelines are apparently 60 pages long. I like to think she's happy there, finding new cracks to measure and new violations to document, ruling her new kingdom with the same iron fist she used here. Some people need that structure, that rigid adherence to rules and regulations, that sense of power over other people's lawn gnomes and mailbox colors. Me? I'll stick with my rainbow driveway, my reasonable HOA president who sometimes texts me memes about the old regime, and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even. It's creating something beautiful in the process and getting paid for it, and maybe inspiring other people to add a little color to their own lives. Also, I'm now banned from 3 HOA-related Facebook groups for promoting anti-HOA sentiment and encouraging homeowner rebellion. But I consider that a badge of honor. They gave me flair that says driveway anarchist in one group before they kicked me out. I screenshot it. It's my phone wallpaper. Best $500 fine I never actually paid. 10 out of 10 would spite the HOA again.